A woman with no friends is not broken. She is not to be pitied, and she is not less because she walks alone. She is a force in motion, even when her path is quiet. In a world that often defines worth by social circles, invitations, and constant connection, her silence can be misunderstood. But she knows something deeper. That strength is not measured by how many people surround you, but by how you stand when no one is clapping, when no one is watching. Solitude does not equal weakness. In a world that celebrates constant connection, noise, and visibility, choosing, or even simply living, in solitude is often misunderstood. It's mistaken for loneliness, sadness, or social failure. But solitude is something entirely different. It's not a lack, it's a presence, a quiet space where strength can be built without distraction, without performance, and without the need to be seen to be validated. There is power in being alone, not the power that demands control, but the kind that whispers of deep self-knowledge. When a person sits in solitude, they begin to face themselves without filters. There's no one to impress, no role to play, and no expectations to meet. What remains is truth, the raw, honest version of the self that often gets buried under social masks and obligations. This space of solitude becomes a mirror, reflecting not only flaws and wounds, but also untapped potential and quiet resilience. Solitude gives room for reflection. It allows space for questions that busy lives often ignore. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I truly want? What do I believe? These are the questions that shape identity, and they are often only heard in the stillness. While the world rushes forward, chasing distraction after distraction, solitude invites a pause. And in that pause, clarity grows. From clarity comes confidence. Not the loud kind that needs to prove itself, but the kind that stands steady no matter who is or isn't watching. There's also a certain courage in being alone. It takes bravery to sit with your thoughts, to face the discomfort that sometimes rises when there's no one around to shift your attention away. But with time, that discomfort fades, and what's left is peace, the kind that doesn't come from the presence of others, but from an unshakable connection to self. That's not weakness. That's strength in its purest, most enduring form. People often equate strength with doing, with speaking up, with leading crowds. But there is equal, if not greater, strength in choosing silence when needed, in walking alone without fear, and in building a life that doesn't depend on constant external interaction. Solitude allows for the building of inner structure, mental, emotional, and spiritual. It's in these quiet seasons that people heal, grow, and prepare. When there is no one else to lean on, you learn how to lean into yourself. And once you do, you realize that your own presence is not something to escape, but something to value. The truth is, a person who finds peace in solitude becomes unshakable. They are not swayed by public opinion, not crushed by absence, and not defined by their social status. They move through the world with a sense of inner alignment that many chase but few find. They don't need a crowd to validate their worth. They've already discovered it within. They are not weak because they walk alone. They are strong because they've walked through the fear of solitude and come out whole on the other side. Solitude is not the absence of love or connection. It is the foundation of it. Only by knowing oneself deeply can a person truly connect with others in a meaningful way. Until then, relationships can be shallow, built on need rather than truth. Solitude strips away the noise and lays the groundwork for real, lasting connection, with self first and with others second. So no, solitude does not equal weakness. It is a quiet kind of power, a space where transformation begins, where voices grow clearer, and where the strongest parts of us are born. Self-reliance builds inner power not because it eliminates the need for others, but because it strengthens the foundation upon which everything else is built. Depending on others can offer comfort, but depending on yourself builds something far more enduring: resilience, clarity, and quiet confidence, Self-reliance is the ability to trust yourself, to meet your own needs, and to know that even when no one else shows up, you still will. That kind of inner power cannot be taken away by circumstance or rejection. It is earned, moment by moment, through choosing to rise instead of waiting to be rescued. This strength doesn't come from arrogance or isolation. It comes from experience, soft and hard. 1. It comes from showing up for yourself when life doesn't go as planned, when people fall short, or when everything feels uncertain. In those moments, you learn to lean inward. You start solving problems not by waiting for someone else to fix them, but by asking yourself, "What can I do?" That question alone shifts everything. It turns helplessness into action and fear into forward motion. Self-reliance teaches responsibility, not in a burdensome way, but in an empowering one. It reminds you that you have more control over your life than you think. Not over everything, but over your responses, your mindset, and your choices. You stop waiting for perfect conditions or for someone to give you permission. Instead, you begin to build, step by step, based on what you have and who you are right now. Over time, that creates momentum. It creates a sense of ownership over your life, and with that ownership comes freedom. There's also deep peace in self-reliance. When you know that you can rely on yourself emotionally, mentally, and even practically, you no longer fear being alone. You are no longer driven by the need to be needed, liked, or constantly reassured. You may still enjoy companionship, love, and support, but you're not defined by them. You engage from fullness, not from lack. And because of that, your relationships become stronger, healthier, and more authentic. You're not clinging to others out of fear. You're connecting out of choice. Self-reliance also sharpens your intuition. When you stop outsourcing decisions, you start listening more closely to your own voice. You learn to discern what feels right, not just what looks good on paper or what others expect. That inner compass becomes your guide, and with each decision made from that place of alignment, your confidence grows. You trust your judgment more, even when the path is unclear. You stop second-guessing yourself at every turn because you've seen what you're capable of when you take responsibility and act with intention. Over time, self-reliance builds a kind of quiet power. It's not loud or boastful. It doesn't need applause or validation. It's steady. It's calm. It's the kind of strength that allows you to keep going when life is uncertain, and to remain grounded when everything around you shifts. It's what holds you up when support is thin and lifts you back up when you fall. And perhaps most importantly, it's what teaches you that you are enough, not because of what you have or who stands beside you, but because of who you've become in the process of relying on yourself. This kind of inner power can't be handed to you. It's built. It's forged in challenge, tested in silence, and proven in moments when you choose courage over comfort. And once it's there, it becomes the most stable thing in your life. Self-reliance doesn't mean you never need anyone. It means you never lose yourself when others aren't there. It means you are whole, even in the quiet. True identity emerges in stillness, in the quiet moments when the noise of the world fades and there is nowhere to hide from yourself. It is in that space, when there is no audience, no distractions, no expectations, that the real you begins to surface. Not the version shaped by opinions or approval, not the one performing to fit in or be accepted, but the self that exists beneath all of it. Stillness is where clarity lives. It doesn't demand attention. It invites awareness, and in that awareness, identity is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you remember. In the constant rush of daily life, it's easy to lose touch with who you are. There are roles to play, deadlines to meet, and pressures to conform. You're pulled in 100 directions, answering to responsibilities, expectations, and social norms. Amid all that movement, your sense of self can begin to blur. You may start defining yourself by what you do, how productive you are, or how others perceive you. But none of that is the foundation of identity. It's the surface. Stillness is what allows you to go deeper. When you slow down, you begin to notice the truth beneath the surface. You become aware of the patterns in your thoughts, the emotions you've been pushing aside, the dreams you've been ignoring. You hear the quiet voice inside, the one that's always been there, even when drowned out by the volume of life. That voice isn't demanding or dramatic. It's calm, consistent, and honest. It doesn't speak in fear or comparison. It speaks in truth and possibility. But you only hear it when you're still enough to listen. In stillness, you begin to separate who you are from what you've been told to be. You question the stories you've been living, the ones about what success should look like, what love should feel like, or who you need to be to feel worthy. You realize that many of those stories weren't written by you, and more importantly, they don't reflect the real you. That realization is not always easy, but it's freeing. Because once you see it, you can begin to rewrite the script. You can let go of identities that were never yours to carry and reclaim the one that always was. Stillness also reveals what matters most. It strips away the noise and brings focus to your values, your passions, and your truth. It shows you what fuels your spirit and what drains it. It reminds you that you don't have to do everything or be everything. You just have to be aligned with your heart, your vision, and your integrity. When that alignment happens, identity becomes effortless. You no longer try to find yourself because you are already there, fully present and fully enough. This process of rediscovery doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds gradually in quiet moments of reflection, solitude, and honesty. It might happen in a morning walk, a journaling session, or a silent evening alone. And while it may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent a long time disconnected from yourself, it ultimately brings peace, because knowing who you are gives you direction. It gives you strength. It anchors you when life becomes unpredictable and reminds you of your own power when things feel uncertain. True identity doesn't need to be proven or performed. It simply needs to be lived. And living, it begins with being still long enough to meet yourself, not the curated version, but the real one, the one who knows what you value, what you believe, and what kind of life you want to build. In that stillness, you stop looking for validation and start moving from inner truth. And that is where your most authentic, powerful life begins. Loneliness and independence are often mistaken for the same thing, but they are entirely different experiences. Loneliness is a feeling, an ache that comes from disconnection, from others, from purpose, or even from oneself. It carries a weight, a longing for something that feels absent. Independence, on the other hand, is a state of being. It is grounded in self-sufficiency, clarity, and the ability to stand alone without feeling incomplete. While loneliness drains, independence empowers. While loneliness says, I am not enough without someone, independence says, I am whole, even on my own. Being alone does not always mean being lonely. Solitude, when embraced with intention, becomes a powerful space for growth. It creates room to hear your own thoughts, understand your needs, and recognize your strength. In that quiet, there's no pressure to perform or please. There's simply space to exist fully as you are. That's where independence thrives. It grows not from isolation, but from deep connection to self. It isn't about rejecting others. It's about knowing you don't need others to define you. Loneliness can show up even in a crowded room. You can be surrounded by people and still feel unseen, unheard, or misunderstood. That's because loneliness isn't about physical presence. It's about emotional connection. When you're not in alignment with those around you or with yourself, it can create a sense of distance, even in the middle of company. Independence, in contrast, feels spacious, not empty. It's a conscious choice to stand in your own energy, not out of fear, but from a place of grounded confidence. People often fear being alone because they associate it with being forgotten or left behind. But independence shows that solitude can be a season of strength, not punishment. It's where you learn to navigate life without needing constant reassurance. You begin to trust your instincts, make decisions from your own values, and find peace in your own presence. That kind of self-trust becomes a solid foundation, one that supports healthy relationships rather than replacing the need for them. In fact, true connection with others is only possible when you're not dependent on them for your identity or self-worth. Independence allows you to engage from a place of wholeness. You're not looking for someone to complete you. You're looking for someone to walk beside you. You're not giving from a place of need, but from a place of abundance. This changes everything. It leads to more honest, fulfilling relationships because you're not trying to fill a void. You're sharing your life, not outsourcing your happiness. Loneliness is reactive. It often comes from feeling rejected, excluded, or unseen. It can lead to self-doubt, desperation, or clinging to relationships that are not aligned with your truth. Independence is proactive. It's a choice to explore who you are, to prioritize growth, and to trust that the right connections will come, not out of fear of being alone, but from the strength of standing alone when needed. The journey from loneliness to independence isn't always easy. It requires facing uncomfortable feelings, breaking old patterns, and letting go of the idea that your value depends on how many people surround you. But the reward is freedom. It's the ability to enjoy your own company, to create a life that reflects your true self, and to walk into any room without needing to be validated. There's a quiet power in knowing that you are okay on your own. It's not about being emotionally shut off or rejecting love. It's about knowing love starts with you. And once you realize that, you stop fearing loneliness and start embracing independence. Because it's in that space, where you are no longer waiting to be saved, that you become the strongest, truest version of yourself. Resilience is forged in isolation, not because isolation is easy, but because it reveals what you're made of. It strips away the distractions, the noise, and the support systems you may have leaned on without realizing it. In isolation, there is no one else to carry the weight, no one to reassure or fix things for you. What remains is you, your thoughts, your fears, your strength, and that's where resilience begins. It doesn't come from comfort, it grows in discomfort. It's shaped in the moments when you want to quit but don't, when you break down and still get back up, even if no one else sees it. Isolation forces you inward. It removes the safety net of external validation and asks you to find something deeper within yourself. At first, it may feel like emptiness. It might feel like silence that echoes too loudly. But if you stay with it, you begin to hear something more powerful, your own voice. That voice becomes your guide, your coach, your comforter. You learn to soothe to self, motivate to self-reflect. And in doing so, you start building a core that can withstand more than you thought possible. There is a kind of strength that only comes when you've had to hold yourself together. It's not dramatic or loud. It's the quiet strength that allows you to keep moving when there's no one around to applaud you. It's the kind that teaches you to believe in your own capacity, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. In isolation, you are forced to become resourceful. You learn to problem solve with what you have. You learn to be your own backup plan. That kind of resilience doesn't just help you survive hard times. It makes you unstoppable in the future. You also start to understand the difference between being alone and being lonely. Isolation can begin as loneliness, but if you stay long enough to face it, it can transform into solitude, a place of deep self-awareness and personal power. You realize that being alone doesn't mean being abandoned. It means being with the one person who will always be there, yourself. And when you learn to trust that person, when you learn to stand with yourself through uncertainty, pain, and doubt, you become unshakable. Resilience built in isolation is long, lasting because it is rooted in self-trust, You've proven to yourself that you can handle hard things. You've faced fear, grief, disappointment, and still found a way to keep going. That kind of internal proof creates a foundation that external circumstances can't shake. Life will continue to throw challenges, but you won't collapse every time the ground shifts, because you've already stood firm in the storms before. This doesn't mean isolation is ideal or that connection isn't important. Human beings need each other, and relationships are a vital part of life. But when connection is missing, by choice or by circumstance, it doesn't have to break you. It can become a sacred space where you grow, reflect, and emerge stronger. Resilience isn't about pretending to be fine. It's about allowing yourself to feel the weight of life and still choosing not to give up. In time, the resilience forged in isolation becomes something you carry with you. It changes how you walk into rooms, how you handle rejection, how you deal with change. You know you can survive difficulty because you already have. You've been in the dark and found your own light. And that is a power no one can give you and no one can take away. Wholeness attracts genuine connection because when a person is rooted in their own completeness, they no longer seek others out of desperation or need, but from a place of authenticity. When you know who you are, what you value, and what you deserve, you stop chasing people to fill your gaps. You stop bending yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. Instead, you stand firm in your identity, and from that grounded space, the right people are drawn to you, not because you're trying to be anything, but because you're already everything you need to be. So many connections are built on the desire to be completed, to be saved, or to be validated. But those connections rarely last because they're built on imbalance. One person gives more, the other takes more. One seeks identity in the other, and when the dynamic shifts, the connection crumbles. Wholeness removes that dynamic. It says, I am already full, already enough, already capable. It allows two people to meet not to complete one another, but to complement each other. And that is where genuine connection begins. When you operate from wholeness, your energy changes. You become more honest, more present, more open. Not because you're trying to impress or secure someone's affection, but because you have nothing to prove. You're not hiding parts of yourself to be liked. You're not performing a version of yourself to avoid rejection. You show up as you are, with all your flaws and all your strength, and that kind of openness creates space for others to do the same. Real connection happens when two people can be fully themselves. It happens when there is mutual respect, mutual value, and mutual growth. Wholeness creates that possibility. When you're whole, you're not threatened by someone else's independence. You don't need constant reassurance to feel secure. You're not afraid to have hard conversations because you're not afraid of losing yourself in them. You listen better, love more honestly, and set boundaries not to push people away, but to protect your peace. Wholeness also makes it easier to let go of what isn't meant for you. You don't hold on to relationships that drain you or compromise who you are just to avoid being alone. You recognize when something doesn't align, and you're strong enough to walk away without bitterness. That strength is magnetic. It signals to others that you value yourself, and in doing so, you teach them how to treat you. This kind of connection isn't loud. It's not always dramatic or filled with constant validation. It's steady, it's clear. It's rooted in something deeper than appearances or surface-level compatibility. It feels safe because it's built on truth. It feels peaceful because there's no pretending. And it feels lasting because both people are bringing their full selves into the space, not just the parts they think will be accepted. Genuine connection cannot be forced. It cannot be manipulated or rushed. But it can be attracted. And the most powerful way to attract it is by becoming whole within yourself, by healing your wounds, by knowing your worth, by choosing growth over comfort. When you do that, you send a message to the world. I am ready for what is real. And what is real begins to find you, not because you went looking, but because you became ready. Wholeness is not perfection. It is not having every answer or never feeling doubt. It is a quiet knowing that you are complete as you are, and that the love you seek is not a rescue mission. It is a reflection of what already exists inside you. When you live from that space, the connections you build are not just deep, they are transformative. The journey from solitude to self-discovery is not about proving your worth to the world, it's about realizing it for yourself. Wholeness is not something you find in others, it's something you uncover within. And once you do, everything changes. You no longer chase connection to feel complete. You attract it because you already are. You stop settling for half-hearted love or surface-level relationships because you've learned to stand in the fullness of who you are. The connections that follow are real, rooted, and rare. They are drawn not to your need, but to your truth. And that truth is powerful, because it comes from someone who no longer fears being alone. Someone who has found strength in stillness, clarity in solitude, and love in their own reflection. That is the kind of presence that changes everything.